Hi! Welcome to this video, which I have decided is going to be all about knitting for babies and kids and toddlers and teens, and what they like, what they don't like, what maybe works well for them, and what we maybe don't want to knit for them. I decided to come to you today partially, I'm going to take this off, but you know, I thought I would show you my Halloween costume. I know we're a month early, but I already had the idea and I thought it would just be silly in this video about knitting for kids to basically dress for a kid. Like a kid would think this is hilarious, right? Before we really get into it, very important, what am I sipping on today? I had to match my outfit, right? It goes. This is the tropical Red Bull, in case you're wondering. So what I was thinking about for this video is that I would just share basically the things that I personally have knit for kids and babies in my life. It's gonna be really just from my perspective. I think that I should start this video off with like a pretty big caveat, and that is I am not a parent. I don't have my own children. So take everything you hear here with a grain of salt, because do I really know what I'm talking about? No. However, I do have kids in my life, nieces, nephews, and other kids that I do knit for and that I spend a decent amount of time with, and so I think I have like at least a little bit of authority, a little bit. Doesn't everybody just need that crazy childless auntie that knits for them? Right? No, you didn't know that was a hole that was missing in your life? Well, I'm here, so. I have to take this off because it's actually kind of squeezing my head a little. I think it is a child size. I'm going to start with accessories, and then garments, and then stuffed animals, and then blankets. When I first started knitting about 3 years ago, I started off with hats, and I made hats for I think everybody in my life. My baby niece was fortunate enough to get the most of these hats because she had the smallest head, and knitting for babies is fun because of the colors. I started off with hats. I know I did the Musselburgh hat more than once, and I did the Hipster hat as well because I thought that would be good, stretchy for like a growing kid's head. But I also don't know if hats are the best for small kids. Now, older kids, yeah, maybe they can like actually keep a hat on. Although I think they're also prone to losing them. But toddlers, especially, like they don't want to keep a hat on. So I'm thinking like a hood or a bonnet would be more appropriate in that situation. I then switched over from knitting hats for kids and babies to also knitting bonnets. And my favorite bonnet pattern is one called the Sunshine Bonnet, I think it is, and I can't remember the name of the designer, but I will put the names and the designers in the description. I'm not very good at remembering off the cuff, and I don't write stuff down for these episodes. I just sit down and press play. So everything else will be down below if you need to know more information. I really like the Sunshine Bonnet because it's garter, and I like how squishy it is and how much it'll grow with a kid's head. For some people, like it might be a drawback that it has ties underneath the neck. Like I think some people are afraid that that's a choking hazard, which I haven't found any issue with. And pro tip, do the little bows, tuck it into the kid's sweatshirt or sweater, and they won't get to them. And then if they pull off the top of the hood or the bonnet, then it won't fall off because it's nicely tied, and it will just be like a little neck warmer. That has worked for me. I've also found that if you put on a bonnet or a hat and then you put their hood of their hoodie over it, sometimes that deters them from taking it off. Sometimes. You guys are probably like, what is this childless lady telling me about raising kids? I don't actually have, any accessories today. Nope, no accessories. What else is in there? Oh yeah. To show you, because they've all been given away. But I do have one plan for making a bonnet, and that is I'm going to make one, I think either out of these two different skeins. One is this like coral orange pink from Ocean Knits, and the other one is this like heavily variegated rainbowy one from Handmade by Haley Bailey. And I think one of those would be really, really great to knit with. The next category that I want to talk about knitting for kids is garments. And I've knit a decent amount of little baby sweaters. The first sweater that I ever knit for a little kid was the Festival sweater by Petite Knit. And this is such a cute pattern. Like, it might be one of the cutest little kids patterns out there. I knit it in 100% cotton, which it was a little heavy, but I think still works. But the only issue with this one is that the bobble rows take a very long time, and I think you're having to like purl through the back loop, purl through 3 through the back loop, or something cuckoo like that, and it was a little tricky, but it was still so worth it for the final product. I have also knit the Teddy sweater by Petite Knit just for the pattern of the sweater. I have not yet put the Teddy face on it, but I really want to someday for some kid. But I did like a marled pink one, and I really like that just for a basic sweater. You could use any yarn with that sweater. I have also knit this hoodie, and this one's actually my second one. Yay, I'm finally going to show you something. This one is my second one, and it's actually basically done, except for weaving in ends and like the finishing work of like putting in a zipper. This is the R&R hoodie by Tanis Lavallee. I have been told, at least by the parents, that this pattern is the pattern to knit for kids. You know, it has everything: pockets, hoodie, zipper. And it is a little bit fiddly to knit, like the pockets, and then you have to go back and like I have to sew the armpits closed and sew in a zipper. I'm currently stalled on this because I can't find the zipper. I bought actually a bunch of zippers to try and see which color would go with it, and I can't find the little bag of zippers I have. So that's a little bit disappointing, and that's why this has been on hold. But I literally need to finish it before the child grows out of it, because that would be a bummer. But look how cute it is, and look how fun that is. It's both a purple yarn and a rainbow yarn marled together. And this is what I mean about knitting for kids. It's just a darn good time. If you're looking for a sweatshirt or sweater to knit for a kid, highly recommend R&R hoodie. And then another one that I am actually currently knitting, and I just started this one. In my last video, I did a yarn haul, and I bought a decent amount of like bright / pastel sock yarn that I showed in that haul. And it just had this like, I need to cast on a child's striped cardigan, and one of you all was so kind to tell me about the Holger cardigan by Petite Knit, and I followed directions and I went and cast it on. So that's what we have here. It's just like a cute little round neck sweater that's kind of hard to see, but I've just joined underneath the arms, and I wanted a cardigan, which I hadn't actually done a cardigan for a kid or a baby, but I wanted this one to be able to like button up and button closed so it could be easily taken on and off. And I'm gonna pair it with these colors. There's gonna be more stripes and fun things. This cardigan has like 2 different colored arms, which I think I'm gonna do striped arms. then like the hem, the cuffs, the neckline, the button band can all be in different colors as well. So that's what we're working with. I think it is so fun. So that's a fun idea if you need to knit something for a kid. You know what? I was gonna say that like what does work about these patterns and what doesn't, but for the most part I think the ones that I have knit have worked pretty well. I think the hoodie over a pullover sweater, if you were going to decide between the two, even though we know that would mean more work. And I would say a bonnet over a traditional hat or beanie. Yeah, okay, so I have given some advice. Another garment that I have knit that is not a sweater is the teddy pants by Petite Knit, and these are like a little dungaree overall situation that are so cute. This one, like, I think jury is still out on how useful it's going to be. I purposely on this one made the arms extra long. Not the arms. There's no arms on this. I made the legs extra long so they could be rolled up and down as the kid grew, as well as it like instructs you to make little buttons for closing the shoulders. And I did like two sets of, well, they were snaps, not buttons, but 2 sets of snaps so that they could also grow with the child and be snapped, you know, a little tighter or a little looser depending on what the child needed size-wise. That one is a bit of a labor of love because you're knitting it, I think, in fingering weight yarn on like a size 2, but the final product is worth it just for cuteness alone. It also, unfortunately, is not a very useful item for me here where I live in California, but I knit it for a baby that does live somewhere cold, so I think it would be most useful for like in a climate where it snows. Yeah. And then last but not least, as far as garments, and this one might seem out of left field, but bear with me, is a tank top. And that's because when we're talking about the kids in our lives, like that also includes the teenagers. And I'm knitting this for my teen niece, and it's the Ripple Bralette that I have lengthened to turn into a tank by Jessie Maed. And I am pretty much almost done with this. I'm just stuck on this I-cord and figuring out how long it needs to be so that I can then pick up for the second little triangle and knit it there. So yeah, I just need to do I-cords. This is also another just example of how fun you can go with knitting for kids and how much more they will experiment often than us boring old adults will. I bought this yarn with no plan for it a while ago, and once I came up with this idea of knitting this for my niece, it was like, well, duh, that's the perfect project for that yarn. So yeah, another option is fun sock yarn that you can knit little tees and tanks for teens out of. Oh, that was a lot of tees. I think is that all the garments I want to talk about? I think that's all the garments I want to talk about. Turns out I did have one more garment that I wanted to mention. This one I made for my niece, but I think it could really honestly easily be gender neutral. It is the Stockholm Slipover by Petite Knit, and it was super fun to pair a sock yarn that she picked out with this fluffy yarn to make this, and I loved knitting it because no sleeves, baby. So yeah, that's just one more option for a garment. I am kind of planning in the back of my mind to have a pair of pants or leggings that go with this, and I think I might base it off of the teddy pants and then just not do the top half. I think the teddy pants are knit bottom up, so you do the legs and then like the little body area. So I think I would just stop and make like a ribbed waistband. And then I could go with this cardigan. Then, the other thing that I really like to knit for kids, and I've only knit 2, but are animals, little stuffed friends. I've only knit from out of this book, but I know that there are other toy designers out there as well. But I would really recommend this one because they're so fun to knit, and they all have little stories about them, and they have really cute clothing and accessories. So I have knit this bear. His name is Mouche, and I have also knit the pig, whose name is Alphonse. And I am in the process of knitting another pig. So far we've just got one arm and the head, and we're not stuffed yet, but look at the little oinker. Oh my god, oh my god, what in the world. I'm working on completing this, and then the thing that is so fun about this is that their personality kind of starts to take shape like as you're knitting it, as it forms. Their personality grows even more when you stuff them, and then when you start making their clothes and they turn into just, they're like their own little beings, and it's so cute. So yeah, I love knitting little things like this. If you are wanting to knit little stuffed things for kids, I'd recommend this book. Last but not least, I think a great thing to knit for kids are blankets. And you can knit, you know, for babies or for older kids. Older kids get cold too. But this blanket that I thought would be so fun for a kid because of all the colors and all the just different options you could put into it. This is the Sweet Shop blanket by Laura Penrose, and I just knit it in a bunch of different worsted weight minis as well as fingering held double, and it was just, yeah, scraps and minis and leftovers that I had. And I think this could also be a really fun, like, grow with you blanket. Like, if I had, I'm breaking a nail, bummer. But if I had a kid, I would want to knit like start with a small one for when they're a baby, and then I could just add on to it as they grow. I think that would be kind of cute. Like add another row every year as they grow. And then finally you'd have a big one for their bed. Although I could see then like part of it being really worn out, because of what if it's like really a really loved on blanket and some of it's like really not the same color as the others. Those are things to think about. But still, I think this blanket would be perfect for a baby blanket. And I think if you do it in a lot of fun colors or add like throw in a neon, it's just kind of unexpected and not like your typical little knit baby blanket. Those are all of my ideas for knitting for kids. I love knitting for kids. I think it's so fun because you can play so much with color. I love hearing kids' opinions and what they would prefer in their garment, whether it's their favorite color or what type of garment they want, or if you're knitting them a little animal, they will be very opinionated about what they want their little animal to be wearing. And I think it's a really fun way to build that connection with the child. It's also a really great way to use up smaller amounts of yarn that you have. So if like you want to do something kind of scrappy, little animal clothes or a blanket, great place to use up scraps. And just the projects use less yarn overall. So if you want to like knit something out of a special skein of sock yarn, you can do that. I love this project because I'm just using a bunch of different sock yarn that I already had for the most part. Some of it was new, but yeah, you can use up different sock yarn, because I know I am not the only one who has the issue of getting sock yarn as souvenirs when I go places and then being like, I don't know what I'm gonna do with this. I often do make socks. And then yeah, because the garments are smaller, we get that instant gratification a lot faster. We get that feeling of like we're gonna have a finished garment in a much shorter amount of time than it takes to knit a full adult sweater. I did forget to mention socks, and I have knit socks for a baby before, and I also have knit socks for my niece and nephew. I never finished my niece's, but I did knit them for my nephew. And so that's another great thing that you can knit for kids, especially as they get older. They might want to like pick out their own sock yarn. But if I was going to knit them for a baby, I would just knit a long tube with a toe on the end, and I wouldn't put a heel in there, and I would just do it as like, you know, they could be long socks that you could pull up their little legs, and then as they grow, they'll, you know, stretch a decent amount to fit the kid, and then you don't have to worry about their actual foot changing sizes and having a heel foot fit them, especially before they're walking. We don't need a perfectly fitting sock. Those are just some of my ideas. Those are some of my thoughts. Yeah, I'm just feeling silly today. That's okay. Some days are silly days. I think this is also a great time of year if you are wanting to start on knitting for Christmas or for the holidays. I celebrate Christmas, so I say Christmas, but for the holidays, especially if you want to do a sweater or something bigger like a blanket or the teddy pants, now would be a great time to start on those. The little kids in our lives, they deserve it. I think sometimes people can think that knitting for kids like maybe isn't worth it because they don't appreciate the items as much, which can totally be true, but I'll tell you, they also sometimes appreciate the items even a lot more, like the stuffed animals. So, food for thought. I'm curious, what are your favorite patterns to knit for children, and do you have any other advice for knitting for stuff for kids? I know the other thing could be yarn choices. Like I normally stick to cotton and superwash merino. There have been some exceptions, but I only make those exceptions if I know the parent is willing and capable to wash and hand wash items, which I have had parents that I know are capable of doing that, which is awesome, but also so often that you just need to have a washable, easily washable item. So keep that in mind. Cotton and superwash merino, both for softness and for practicality. Okay, now I'm really gonna wrap this up. This was all over the place, but I had a good time. Okay,